and welcome to a new episode of Just Paint It. I'm Christina Watts, and today we're going to paint the Nechako River from Nechako Riverside Park. So let's get started. On my palette today, I have a few different blues. I have a cobalt turquoise, a phthalo blue, and an azurite blue. And then we're moving into some darks, which is a burnt umber, a burnt sienna, a buff titanium, and then we have a phthalo green, and we have a gold green, and of course a whole lot of white. So we're going to kind of size up the scene here first, because when you go out and you plein air paint, you have such a vast amount of scenery, and it's so big out there, but your canvas is only so big here. So what you want to do is you want to take certain parts of it to kind of get the essence of the place onto your canvas. So for me, when I'm out here and I'm checking the river, I am saying, you know, that the river part is really dwindling off into almost nothing into the distance, so that I take into account. And then this vast river comes forward and it fills up a lot of the scene here. One of the things that I like to do is not necessarily end my water right off the canvas, but to add some of the river bank here, so I'll be looking at doing that today. So we have a artist grade MDF panel, and these are really great because when it comes to framing, they come in standard sizes, and you can go and buy a general photo frame, pop the glass out, pop your panel in, and your whole framing work becomes a lot easier. So let's just go and dig right in. I'm going to go ahead and take a little bit of my blue on my brush. Now my paints are also doused in an extender because we're outside, and I know they're going to dry fast unless we get rained on. So we're just going to make sure that they're a little bit more fluid as we progress through the scene. So the first thing I'm going to do when I'm looking over at the horizon is say, okay, I want probably a high horizon line today. So these are just standard markers that I'm putting in, and then I'm going to kind of curl them around the bank. I know we're going to have some cliffs coming down here with the trees, so really kind of just getting a kind of a gauge for our water. And then again on the other side of the bank, it kind of comes around and out. So this painting is going to go through a lot of awkwardness before it gets to its masterpiece, and that's completely normal when you're painting. Just allow yourself the freedom to just get in there and start putting paint on your canvas. So once we have kind of that line figured out, might think about my base now, and I know that's kind of coming in here. I dipped my brush into some burnt sienna just to deviate some of that color. And we'll probably put a few plants up here just to give it more of a foreground look, some more dramatic appearance. Now today it's a cloudy, stormy day. You can take artistic license with this, and you could say, no, today is a beautiful, nice day. And maybe if I paint a beautiful, nice day, it will turn into that for us. So I'm just putting white on my canvas, and my brush strokes are going to be kind of crisscrossy. And I really like the looseness of them and the ease that they go on your canvas. I will be dipping my paint through my brush, through my white, and through a few of my blues to get variation of color in the sky. So we'll just go ahead and blow this out. Now I never stay in one area on my canvas for too long, because you end up focusing on that part of your canvas and you don't move around your area. And when you don't move around your area, you end up making more mistakes than you probably would like. Now I have a few different blues. This is that cobalt turquoise. Just going to go ahead and rub it in there. Now I know also my trees are going to have to go on top of this, so I definitely want to make sure I got enough lights in the skies so that it can contrast for that. And I'm jumping into buff titanium, my super secret color. So buff titanium, it just adds this neutralizer in there when your colors get too crazy, too bold. And it really helps, break up your shapes. Now I may start to smooth out my sky. So once I did all my crisscross work, I may choose to leave it like that, give it that nice loose look, or I might choose to take my filbert brush, that's what I'm using right off the get-go, and go ahead and just do some really nice streaks in the sky. So if I had clouds that were really rushing that away, I may choose to do my painting with a lot of streaks. Really, this is going to go off in the distance, so don't worry too much. Just make sure you got some good deviation in color. And we're getting a little sprinkle right now, so that's okay for me because I need to keep these paints a little wet anyways. Who knew you'd be outside in the rain today painting with me? Sometimes you just gotta go. I think this little rain cloud will pass soon. Okay, well, if I start messing with this too much now, what can happen is I can rip the paint up off of the canvas, and I don't want to do that. So I am going to just let this part dry now and may come back to it later. We'll see how the rest of it is looking. So now, as you can see, we need to dip into the trees, and one of the things that you can do is you can work dark to light, or you can work light to dark. So I think what I will do is today I see a lot of light greens down this stretch. And so I'm going to start with that, and then I seen a fish just jump out there. Anyways, you should come down and visit Riverside Park because there's lots of things to see. But as we look down here, there's a lot of light green, so we're going to go for that. So jumping into my green gold here. And I may even throw a little bit of white. So now I haven't cleaned my brush this whole time. I also know that these colors are all going to work together, so just so you know, if you're jumping into analogous colors, you don't necessarily have to clean your brush off. So I'm staring way down here, and I'm going to throw actually a little blue too on my brush because mountains off in the distance kind of look blue, and so do tree lines. So we're just going to go and start just throwing in some lines here. And again, like I said, this is going to look awful. It's going to look really bad until it starts looking good. So don't sweat it. I think the most important thing is that you get some paint down on your canvas that you can push around. I might even swoop in. So one thing with doing landscapes is you should always put your brush stroke in the form that the land is going. So for example, I see those banks cutting in there. I'm not going to go this way, horizontal. Those banks are cutting down into the river, so your brush stroke needs to go with those. Real simple, and I will add some more burnt sienna into this later. But if we don't have these undertones underneath right now, it won't look right later. Now I'm just going to throw some phthalo blue on here. And I'm going to creep up through some of these trees. And again, this is not green trees, not yet. I'm turning my brush so I have a point on it. Now I'm just using just up and down strokes. So these trees are way off in the distance, and you aren't going to notice that they're points on a brush until we get to some that are closer to us, which we'll define later. So the trees that are kind of close to us, we'll do more detail work, but the ones off in the distance, there just needs to be an impression of a tree. And looks like the bank comes down. So I will kind of look over and see kind of what's that bank doing over there. Some trees need to be higher than others. And then we'll carry it through to the other side. And we see more sporadic trees on the other side of the bank, and they're kind of right down there. So these guys can go right in there. Jumping into a few colors now. I love painting thick. The thicker the paint, I think that just looks really cool. And I probably pull out my palette knife today because if it starts raining, I'm going to have to work really fast, and I know I can slam that in. So this side of the bank I'm going to keep darker, because if I look over and I squint with my eyes, I notice that that side of the bank is a lot darker. So I'm just making a mental note to keep that one darker. And I know we've got some little bushes coming in here, but we'll just deal with that when we get there. And we can go like that, and we'll make these trees higher. So the other thing that I'm looking at is, are these trees on this side, do they seem higher than this side? And in some cases they do, like there's one big one there. And this is where I'm just dabbing with my brush, because that tree on that side is not an evergreen tree, it's a leafed tree. So I'm just gonna push with my brush and leave some lines there to give it a little bit more of a bush top. And then these ones over here, I'll start giving some zigzags as we start coming down. But these, again, this is detail work that I will get into next. We want to put a little bit in there, we can. So again, we see brushes on the other side, and I'm just dabbing my brush for now. I'll clean this up in a bit. And we'll also go darker, so we got some lights on here. Okay, as we come into our base here, we definitely have a lot of grass, so I'm using green gold, bit of white. Again, I didn't clean my brush. I know some people would scorn me for that, but it works for me. And we are out plein air painting. You don't have a lot of those options, and I'm certainly not going to go to the river and clean my brush off in our water system. I always keep my water and dispose of it properly when we're out, because paints contain cadmiums and cobalts, and those are not good for the environment. I'm not going to bring these grasses up too much. As you can see, I'm just pulling and flicking with my wrist, and we're just getting some line work in there. And I can see we have a bit of a bush over there, which is great. I dipped a little of my brush into my buff titanium. Gives it me that creamy color, which neutralizing a bit. And again, pulling up. So there we go. Okay, we're really getting to this awkward point in the canvas. So now what I've got, notice how I'm not going to end off anything at the corner. So my river's going to really come wide in here and be gone. And I'm going to start cutting this bank in more, but I have to put my water in next. So what I am going to do now is, because I'm going from greens to blues, I'm going to start down here, because I know that the reflection from the trees, like the color of the trees, will be in the water. But by the time I get back up to here, I want it more blue. So I'm really just doing it this way so that my paint can come off my brush without me cleaning it again. So for the river water, if you look over, we don't see, like, I would never take my brush and take it down my canvas like this. That's not, yes, the river flows that way, but when we're looking at it, it's a flat surface and the reflections are actually horizontal. So what you want to do is you want to mimic that. And the other thing is, it will always reflect the sky. So water tends to reflect sky. So, you know, you wouldn't paint this blue, you would paint this, the reflections that are around it. So think of the colors that are around your water whenever you're doing that. Okay, so and that in mind, I will start putting in white, and we'll be quick about this. It is nice to start resuming summer. And I like to get out to the parks. We have a ton of awesome parks in Prince George, and they're perfect for plein air painting and for photography, just to go for a walk, take your dog. And if you haven't been down to Riverside, I would suggest that you do come down here, because it is a nice spot, especially in the morning. You want to bring your coffee and just watch the sunrise. The sunrise is right over there. Okay, we got lots of white on here. Before it dries, I am jumping into my other colors to start putting in some water. Again, I'm putting blue. I've got some greens on here too. Really trying to work it So if you see it drying out on your canvas, you're going to have to put some more white and then some more color. And I'm actually going to dig into some of this darker color now. And I'll clean a lot of this up with my palette knife in a sec. If you haven't painted with a palette knife, I definitely suggest you try those. They are a unique tool, and if you have trouble with your hands holding a brush, then they're an excellent alternative. Because instead of holding your brush like a wand or like a pencil, you will hold it like a butter knife. Okay, running some down here, cover up some here. I'm not too worried about going over my edges. I will clean those up again later. It is really, really hard to take a huge scene like this and condense it. So you'll see that this is a little bit different than what you're going to see out there, but that's because I'm trying to compress it and just get the overall vibe. And I'm throwing in some deeper blue there. And going back to white. And I do have some greens that I definitely want to put over on these edges. So remember I said that I wanted green because it's going to reflect the trees, the grass. So we're going to put green in, but we are going to make sure it goes horizontal. There we go. See, paint the sun comes out. Here we go on this side too. You see how I'm dragging that green in? Just pulling it in, pulling it in. Rivers, you can do multiple layers on rivers and they will always look better with more. I'm gonna put some more there. Okay, I think what I'll do is I'll put some zigzag into this scene as well. And by zigzags, I mean, instead of just horizontal lines coming down the river, I'm gonna throw in some zigzags. So I'll start up here, and there's a zigzag. Try to use the white. I may have to jump to my trees as I let some of this dry. We just wanna put these highlights in, and these highlights will be some zigzags. So start horizontal strokes, and then if you need more depth, run some zigzags. And the zigzags, as you get closer to the front, you're going to have to make them bigger. So if you did little ones, they're good for off in the distance, but you really want to get right in there, load your brush or your palette knife. Let's see, there's some zigzags. Now they're getting bigger and they're shooting off. Layer upon layer, this painting will come together. Nice painterly piece of the Nechako River. And we've definitely taken some artistic licensing today with our colors, which I like to do on a lot of my art pieces. And bring that down, more. Now as I cruising over here, I'm just gonna jump to the side a bit so I can crank my arm easier and so that you can see. I think the number one thing I like painting the most is water. There's just something really great about it. Now I'm gonna go ahead and grab some blue, work some more on this water down here. I can even throw some of that phthalo green in. Just watching some of those strokes and where they end up. I'm going to grab some green gold because we're close to that edge with those plants, and that's where we want the green. And then up top, I really want to put some light up here because this is going to be where I need some contrast. So going back to my white there, I think I put too much on. That happens. We all make mistakes. It's just paint. You can paint over it. I think the biggest thing I see when people are learning is that they're afraid to make a mistake, and you're going to make mistakes. It's when you learn how to fix them that you're really, you know, becoming a better painter. Okay, remember how I said you shouldn't mess around with one area too long? Well, it's time for me to move on from my river piece. And again, when I look at my sky and I look at my river and I think, you know, would I go back to these later? Perhaps. Definitely some parts of the sky. But now I really need to start focusing on my trees. And we need to switch now from our big filbert brush that I have used the whole time to get here, because I'm going to need to start really getting in and putting some land in. Okay, so grab my palette knife, and now I am jumping into my burnt umber, my burnt sienna, and my white, and I'm just kind of coming up with a really crazy land color. So it's got a little bit of everything on it. I want to come in here and I want to start to drag this down and into the river some and out. And I may have to switch out to a smaller palette knife if it's kind of cutting in too much. And I'll use the edge just to sort of drag this all up. And this, I know we have some trees over here, so I will leave those be. And then as we kind of come around this bend, I'm gonna rub some of this in because I know that that water cuts into the areas a little bit. So go ahead, use your fingers. It's okay. We used to paint as kids, and we can do that still as adults. And I'm gonna go ahead and think about some of the areas here where we see the land. So now I'm just kind of dropping that in, making it ever so. There's one of our friendly little critters trying to eat me while I paint. And I'm gonna just use some of my finger in here and give that edge a little bit of a shake. And right over here too. So we have these good lines in. And now we want to do some trees. And I have my smaller palette knife. So here we go, another little diamond blade. Really nice. I like to double load them. They're nice, they're flat. And we're gonna get in here and we're gonna just really dab and bounce this around. Okay, so as long as you're making some greenery over here, you will be fine. Now up here in this tree, remember I had made it that bushy tree? I'm just gonna tap a little bit of green gold on the edges because that's probably where the light's hitting. Right there, had a little bit of burnt umber on mine. If you have that happen to you, just wipe it off. And grab some more paint and try it again. So, right there, and there. And then those other greener spruce trees or pine trees on the other side, I'm just grabbing phthalo greens straight up. I know they're dark, so I'm throwing in burnt umber. I want a dark green, mixing it right there on my palette on the side. And then grabbing it, and I'm gonna head in here, slice up, and then pull it on a zigzag formation down. And I'll use up the rest of this color to pull some more over here and make it look like we have the appearance of some trees. Grab some green and throw it in there. Now you can also scrape with your knife. So if you got your palette knife tip and you want some of the tree branches or other lines in here, you can scrape right in, do a little bit, they call it sgraffito. So what you want to do is just dig in and go for it. Okay, let's quickly jump back to our other side here, and I'm putting phthalo green and phthalo blue together, mixing that up on my palette. I know it needs to be lighter, throwing in some white, because I want to make sure that we get these trees off in the distance to be that blue-green. So we're just gonna go ahead and throw a little bit of bush on those guys, and all I am doing is just allowing the paint to come off my palette knife on top of these shapes that I've already done. And as I move over here, you know, I just want to shift it to some more greens, so I'm throwing my green gold in and putting those guys in nice and loose. I want to change some of that, scrape it up, and then we'll come down here. Now some of this foliage comes over the bank, so that is where we can start fixing some of the areas of our bank that we may not like. And we have a little bit in here. I put some white on my palette knife just so that I can start giving it some different color as we move across. And I'll also throw some titanium buff in the mix now as well. So the thing with plein air paintings is you want to get in, you want to get them done nice and fast, and you just want to take the essence of that painting back home where, you know, if you want to keep going and add more details, you can. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and just really graffiti these guys up. Get a little dark in here now as we come around the bend. Make this a really nice loose painting. And even as we come down here, we know we've got a little bit of lines in our grass work, so I will just go ahead and flick some of this up. Some of that grassy area, some there. And then I'm gonna grab quickly my filbert brush again and clean up any of my edges on my river. So river kind of comes over and cuts into some of these banks at spots, and that's what I'm trying to do now. So see the little patterns that are coming in? It's not this like circle down hard. We just want to drag it in, drag that river into the bank a little bit more where it needs to go. Certainly down here where we had some of that ledge coming in. And we have more ledge here. Now we had some big plants. I'm really gonna just throw these in quickly. So we have grass that's coming up higher off of here. And we want to make it a bit darker. Just gives it a little bit more interest because this is just right close to us. And then once we go dark, I'll just throw a little bit of foliage there. And maybe we have some bush. So I'm just gonna spin this around. So this isn't bad. This is something that, you know, if you're fast, you can pull off in half an hour like we did today. And definitely a good painting for you to try at home and to take these, hope you take these tricks with you to your park and just really enjoy the day. So now that we're almost done, I'm gonna grab my other, whoops, I'm gonna just grab this side here, fix that up. I could probably tinker with this for probably, you know, another half hour, getting things just so, but all of that is just cleanup work for later. So with that in mind, I'm gonna take my signature brush out, sign off on this piece. And you have yourself an artful day.